For 33 years, 2 bullets fired through an 18-year-old boy's skull, the same night his girlfriend was raped and shot 5 miles away, sat buried inside a tree. Nobody touched them until 1989, when Montana police picked up a chainsaw to cut that tree down. Whoever fired them had been walking free the entire time, and even then, the wood didn't give up his name. To understand why a grown man would cut down a tree looking for the truth, you have to go back to where the question started. Long before the chainsaws, before the DNA labs, before anyone in Cascade County had ever heard the words genetic genealogy, there were just 2 teenagers and one ordinary winter night that went terribly wrong. Great Falls, Montana, sits where the Missouri River drops over a series of waterfalls, which is exactly how the city got its name. In the 1950s, it was a working town, built on the railroad and the dams that powered it, home to Malmstrom Air Force Base, where airmen from all over the country came to serve out their time. One of them was 18-year-old Lloyd Duane Bogle, a quick-witted kid from Waco, Texas, stationed in Montana less than a year. The locals called him Duane. Back home, his family said he could charm a room without even trying. Patricia Kalitzke was 16, a junior at Great Falls High School, the kind of girl who seemed to be good at everything she touched: ballet, tap dancing, making people laugh without effort. Her friends called her Ski. She just cut her hair short like something out of a comic book, and she was the center of every room she walked into. In December of 1955, at her cousin's wedding, Ski met Duane. From what everyone around them said afterward, it didn't take long for either of them to fall hard. On the night of January 2nd, 1956, the two of them grabbed Cokes at Pete's Drive-In, just like they had a dozen times before. Employees there remembered them leaving a little after 9. From the drive-in, the trail goes quiet for a while, but everyone who knew the area assumed where they'd gone, because everyone in Great Falls knew the spot near Wadsworth Park along the Sun River as the local lovers' lane. It was where teenagers parked, talked, and felt for a little while like nobody else in the world existed. Patty never made her 10 o'clock curfew. Her parents called around to her sisters first, the way parents do when they're trying not to panic. When nobody had seen her, they let themselves believe the easier story, that she and Duane had run off and eloped, the same thing Patty's oldest sister had done a few years before. That hope lasted exactly 1 day. On the morning of January 3rd, 3 boys hiking near the Sun River came across a car parked between 2 trees. The headlights were still on, the radio was still playing, the engine was running, and the emergency brake was set, like whoever had been driving meant to come right back. They didn't. Lying face down beside the car was Duane Bogle, his hands tied behind his back with his own belt, shot twice in the head. His wallet was still in his pocket. His camera, an expensive one, sat untouched on the seat. Whoever did this hadn't wanted his money, they had wanted something else entirely. And Patty was nowhere. For an entire day, half of Cascade County searched for her, dreading the worst and hoping anyway. On January 4th, a county road worker driving a gravel stretch called Vineyard Road looked down a 20-foot embankment and saw her. She had been shot in the head too. Because she was found fully clothed, the first reports said she likely hadn't been touched beyond that. It would take a closer look to learn the truth, that Patty had suffered blunt force trauma and been assaulted before she was killed, and that whoever did it had kept her alive for hours after Duane was already gone. Great Falls had simply never seen anything like this. Sheriff D.J. Leeper bought a polygraph machine with his own money. 10 officers worked the case full-time. Patty's father, a railroad carpenter, had co-workers who pooled together a reward that eventually topped $6,000, real money in 1956, and nobody ever claimed a cent of it. Investigators chased every lead they could find. They pulled in a friend of Duane's from the base after Patty's mother mentioned an argument between them, then cleared him. 2 witnesses came forward with a story that nearly got a man arrested until hours of questioning revealed they had made the whole thing up. After 2 months, the sheriff had to admit defeat on working the case full-time, though he told the local paper he wasn't giving up. He was right to keep hope. He was just off on the timeline. It would take 65 years. Over the decades that followed, the suspect list grew to 35 names, including, strangely enough, a young troublemaker named James Whitey Bulger, who had been living in Great Falls at the time with a 1951 rape arrest already on his record. Decades before he became one of the most notorious gangsters in American history, Bulger was just another name investigators couldn't fully eliminate and couldn't fully convict either. In 1964, a man named Wendell Wallace Smith actually confessed to killing a boy and a girl in Montana. For a moment, it looked like the case might finally close. Then his story fell apart under questioning, and he was cleared too. The case went cold, then colder, and Great Falls learned to live with not knowing. That was supposed to be the end of it, until 1989, which brings us back to that tree. A Cascade County captain named Keith Wolverton had grown up in Great Falls. He had gone to high school with Patty Kalitzke. Decades later, working cold cases as a cop, he became convinced the answer was sitting inside the trunk of that tree, in the form of 2 stray bullets fired the night Duane died. Using gamma-ray imaging to find the metal hidden in the wood, his team finally cut the tree down and pulled out 6 bullets. They sent them to the FBI, hoping ballistics could trace them back to a weapon and to an owner. Nothing came of it. Whatever answer Wolverton was hoping to find inside that tree, it wasn't there. But something else had survived all those years, something far smaller than a bullet. Back in 1956, the coroner who examined Patty's body had taken a vaginal swab and sealed it onto a microscope slide, an entirely standard procedure that, at the time, told investigators nothing useful at all. DNA testing didn't exist yet. The slide sat in an evidence room for 45 years, through the moon landing, through the fall of the Soviet Union, through the entire childhood and adulthood of a generation that hadn't even been born when Patty died. In 2001, a detective named Phil Matheson finally sent that slide to the Montana State Crime Lab. What they found was a single sperm cell that did not belong to Duane Bogle. Patty had been raped, and her attacker had left behind, without ever knowing it, the one piece of himself he could never take back. They ran the DNA against all 35 suspects. Nothing matched. They entered it into the National CODIS database. Still nothing. The case went quiet again. The break, when it finally came, didn't come from Montana at all. In 2018, a case that had seemed permanently unsolvable, the identity of California's Golden State Killer, was cracked using a method nobody had thought to apply to old murders before: forensic genetic genealogy. Instead of searching for a killer directly in a criminal database, investigators built out his family tree from distant relatives who had voluntarily uploaded their own DNA to ancestry websites, then worked their way inward until one name was left standing. A detective sergeant named John Cadner, who had inherited the Kalitzke-Bogle file in 2012 and spent years digitizing decades of yellowed paperwork, watched what happened in California and knew exactly what he needed to do next. In 2019, Cadner sent the old sample to a lab called Bode Technology. Their genealogists built a reverse family tree from a single 63-year-old sperm cell, and the search came back with not one name, but 3 people genetically compatible with the sample. 2 of those branches led nowhere near Montana. The third one led straight to a man named Kenneth Gould, born and raised in Great Falls, who'd lived less than a mile from Patty's house and spent his whole life there working as a horse trainer, riding the very trails around Vineyard Road where her body had been left. He had never once been questioned. His name wasn't anywhere in the file. For 65 years, the man responsible had simply been a neighbor. There was just one problem. Kenneth Gould had died in 2007, and his body had been cremated. There was no direct sample left to test. So Cadner had to do something almost unthinkable. He drove to Missouri and told Gould's surviving children that their father, a man with no criminal record and nothing on paper that would ever raise a flag, might be responsible for one of the most brutal unsolved murders in Montana history. They agreed to give their DNA anyway. The comparison came back as close to certain as science allows. The sperm cell from 1956 belonged to their father. For decades, the people of Great Falls had speculated wildly about who could have done this. Some believed it was Bulger, simply because of his reputation and his proximity. A retired Great Falls detective named John Cameron wrote an entire book arguing the real killer was Edward Wayne Edwards, a convicted serial killer imprisoned in Montana around the same time, and who Cameron believed might secretly be the Zodiac killer himself. There were even uglier rumors, the kind that hurt Duane's family the most, suggesting he had somehow tangled with drug dealers back in Texas or gotten mixed up in organized crime in Montana. None of it was true. The real answer wasn't a gangster, a serial killer, or a conspiracy. It was a 29-year-old husband and father who trained horses a few blocks away and had never once given anyone to look at him twice. So what kind of man does something like this and then simply goes home? Everything investigators learned about Kenneth Gould points to someone who understood control. He worked with horses for a living, an occupation that rewards patience and a steady hand over animals many times his own size. The way Duane was killed, forced down, hands bound with his own belt, shot once from behind, wasn't the work of panic, it was deliberate. But Gould didn't stop there. He took Patty somewhere else, kept her alive for hours, and assaulted her before killing her too, which suggests his motive that night went far beyond simply eliminating a witness. There is also an uncomfortable detail buried in his own history. 4 years before the murders, when Gould was 25, he married a girl who was 16, the exact same age Patty was the night she died. Investigators never drew a hard public conclusion from that fact. It's hard to look at it and not wonder anyway. Whatever was happening underneath Kenneth Gould's ordinary life, he knew enough to run from it. A little over a month after the murders, he sold his family's property and moved. He bounced through 2 more Montana towns before leaving the state entirely in 1967, and once he was gone, he never came back, not even to visit. He raised 5 children in the Ozarks of Missouri, lived to 79 years old, and died of natural causes without ever telling a single one of them what he had done in the winter of 1956. When detectives finally told his children the truth, one of them said it best: "Some people just have secrets nobody else ever finds out about." The Cascade County Sheriff's Office stood in front of cameras and said the name that had been missing from this case for 65 years. Sheriff Jesse Slaughter told reporters this was as good as it was ever going to get since Gould was already dead. There would be no trial, no conviction, just a name finally attached to a file that had outlived almost everyone connected to it. Duane's younger brother, who had idolized him growing up, had died 8 years earlier without ever hearing the answer. Patty's one surviving sister was alive when the news broke, but dementia had already taken enough of her that she couldn't fully understand what she was being told. Duane's niece spoke to reporters on behalf of a family that was, in her words, relieved to finally stop wondering, even as the news reopened wounds some of them had carried for 50 years. If a man like that can disappear into an ordinary life for half a century, who else is out there right now, hiding in plain sight behind a name nobody would ever to check? Let me know what you think down in the comments.